Got a lot of people transferring. Let's talk about that. Who's the first one we want to touch on? Tolan?
Well, that's the bad news.
Yeah,
so
I know.
LSU
That's why I said who's the first one we want to touch
good
on.
news or bad news first.
What's the deal with that?
It feels like Auburn is getting into this NIL game, and it feels like Tolan and me have gone to the highest bidder. This is purely speculative. I have no idea, but Demario Tolan was set to make an impact on LSU going into his. He got significant playing time as a freshman. They were building a role around him on the defense. It seemed like all systems go pretty much for LSU for him to be a starter next year on LSU's defense. Is going to be a top 10 team. Instead, you see he signs with like a middling Auburn team that is just now finding its way into. Who's their new head coach? Noah.
What?
Who? Auburn?
Yeah.
Hugh Freeze?
Hugh Freeze? Are you serious?
Okay, this makes a lot of sense now.
Right.
I
Hugh
thought
Freeze
you were
was working
kidding.
the phone. No, I forgot. But when you see that Hugh Freeze is in the game, that makes a lot of sense as well. Whenever
That's what I was wondering.
It feels like Demario Tolan just went to the highest bidder.
Yeah.
And that's the NIL world you live in. You get one free transfer or one free transfer spot, and this is the way you want to burn it. Obviously, LSU felt like they didn't have to match, so off he goes to Auburn.
Hugh Freeze was always a good recruiter, right? Isn't that kind of what he's known for?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's different ways to skin a cat. He chose his way, ultimately burned him.
True.
But I mean, with Tolan, it was just surprising because even though he didn't get as much attention as a lot of the other freshmen, he, like Brian Kelly said at the end of the season, that Greg Penn needed to step up because Tolan was basically gunning for a spot. And so I think that had everybody's expectations as, oh, Tolan's going to be a guy next year that's actually going to, get on the field and make an impact. And so I think it just caught everybody off guard, him leaving so soon. But I think a lot of that might have to do with, like Lloyd said, the attention that he wasn't getting, at least maybe on the NIL front, just in general. He just wasn't getting maybe the respect he thought he deserved by everybody other than the coaches, maybe. So I think maybe he just saw an opportunity in Auburn to make a bigger impact.
Yeah. Makes sense. All right, what about this Syracuse transfer, Darian Chestnut, committing to the Tigers? Are we excited about that?
I'm trying to think. I know I had a question about Demario Tolan that I wanted to ask. Hold on, it'll come to me. But like you said, when it comes to, do you think that this was a situation in which he was asked to leave, or it was kind of, you saw some off the field stuff happen with LSU previous to the bowl game? He doesn't travel with the team, so I don't know if it was a situation in which
Are there rumors about that?
Here's the door. No, that's what I'm saying.
really.
But there's only two real ways that this could go. He didn't leave just to go to Auburn. He's from Florida, so he's not moving. I mean, technically he's closer to home, but he's not going to his home state. So it just feels like it's one of two things where it was either he was getting an offer from Ole Miss to come. From Auburn to come, and Hugh Freeze to come get some money, or it was kind of shown the door, and he's able to. But I think this is what I wanted to ask: like, how did it happen so quickly? So, which makes me think that as soon as Hugh Freeze was brought on board, that they started meddling with other recruits and seeing who they could pluck from other teams.
For sure, right?
Because that's a position of depth that LSU needs. They need linebackers. They need help there. And so you kind of stole one from LSU a little bit if you're Auburn, and it feels like they were having these conversations previous to the bowl game, like leading up to this, especially with the commitment happening so fast.
Yeah. No, it was definitely interesting because that was a position of need for LSU even with Tolan on the roster. And now that he's gone, that depth is hurt even worse.
So what do they do? So now they're looking in the portal.
Now LSU's going to have to make a move in the portal, just because you really have Harold Perkins, who's kind of an edge rusher in a sense. I mean, maybe he could shift to playing inside linebacker, but right now he's an outside linebacker. And then so really it's just Greg Penn and the Weeks brothers. So
that's all you have right now on the roster. I don't know who they've brought in through the portal.
I've seen a
linebacker in the portal yet.
It's been mostly DBs and defensive linemen.
Yeah, so this is like portal withstanding. This is just like the roster from going into this year. So obviously no Micah Baskerville. West Weeks is a sophomore. He'll be a junior going into this year. His brother comes in. He'll probably have to play.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's nobody you can really move around to put into it. There's nobody big enough to play linebacker for you. So,
wait, who's the brother?
Whit Weeks and West Weeks. We have West currently on the roster, and Whit.
Whit played great in the
he did
All-America.
Yeah, it seems like you took the older brother to get the younger brother in this scenario because he's had.
Is the younger better?
Yes.
Oh.
West has had his fair share of struggles out there. I think that's fair to say. But hey, put your helmet on and go compete. And that's all we're asking for him.
Yeah.
He'll look like he knows what he's doing.
Okay.
And he'll be doing that a lot if they don't add anybody through the portal because, like I said, they are you just have Greg Penn. I mean, Jared Small's a redshirt senior. I don't know if he can come back with COVID, but it doesn't. I think he hit the portal, and you lost another linebacker to the portal that you tried to bring in. Yeah. So they're gonna have to have a plan at linebacker or develop somebody. I don't even know who I don't even know who they've signed at linebacker yet.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't really know who all is coming in. Like, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Harold Perkins, I think, because really, ideally, what you want is to keep him as like a edge rusher, basically, and continue to grow him into like a Devin White type of linebacker. And so, you wanted one more year of him being able to still rush the quarterback and then kind of start, developing him before you throw him into that inside linebacker position.
So you think they would move him? They would move Perkins?
At this point, you almost have to.
Yeah, you don't really have an option. Like, that's your best player, and that's where he's going to be eventually.
Yeah.
And so you're going to want to – because he's not going to be a defensive end. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, he's going to end up being an inside linebacker. And
so who will take his spot then?
Well, we have D-line depth. So, I mean, we'll have
you have edge rushers. And you could even look through the recruiting class. They signed Deshaun Womack at edge, Jackson Howard at edge. Like, they have – that position pretty much covered up.
The transfer portal has been almost, they have 5 or 6 defensive linemen. So you have depth at that position. Mm-hmm. Linebacker, you don't. So you'd be more willing to lose a spot as an edge rusher. But it just comes down to performance. Like, is Harold Perkins ready to make that jump? Because playing.
That's what I was going to ask. Do you play edge rusher to prepare yourself for that position?
You just get him reps.
At his position in the program. He's young, so you put him there because he's such an athletic freak.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to think as much when you're an edge rusher. Now, when you're an inside linebacker, there's a lot more that you're having to diagnose and see and figure out. You're going to play coverage more than just, go get the quarterback. Mm-hmm. So it's more of a mental thing that would have to be developed because he has the physical tools to do whatever he wants. I mean, he could go play slot wide receiver if he wanted.
Running back.
It's just all about the mental aspect of the game that he would have to develop.
Because usually a middle linebacker is the one that's calling out your entire defense. He's aligning your front seven. He's calling out it's a lot more responsibility than just saying, Perk, go rush the passer.
Right.
And that's something that you saw obviously a skill set in where he's elite. Mm-hmm. And so you just get him game reps and get him comfortable with being on the field, and then you hope through spring and fall he's able to make that transition to middle linebacker because he's the best option you have, I'd imagine, at this point, unless they pull like a rabbit out of a hat.
Right. But I think Derek Davis Jr. was a guy that people thought potentially might switch from safety to linebacker because, he's massive. You saw whenever he was playing running back in the bowl game. I mean, he's a big guy, so he was a big safety. And so I don't think people would have been surprised if he made that shift, but he's still in the portal. I don't think he's committed anywhere yet. So I think there might still be hope that he comes back because, he did still play in the bowl game.
What year is he? Do we know?
He is
he a sophomore?
I think he's a redshirt.
I think he's a redshirt freshman.
Oh, he is?
Yeah, so, he's got time in front of him. So, if you can get him back and he makes the shift to linebacker, that would be big, even if he's not going to play a lot of minutes there. Just to at least have that depth where you can put him in there, and then he could go play running back if he wants. You know what I mean? Like, give him the opportunity to do what he wants to do, because you could use that depth at the linebacker position.
Right. So we got 2 defensive backs coming in, one from Ohio State.
Now that we're done with the bad news, we get the good news.
I know, right? Ja'Kalen Johnson, and then from Syracuse, Darian Chestnut. What do we know about these 2? Are we excited about them? Well, Darian announced on, Sunday?
Yeah, I think they both announced yesterday. Well,
oh, yeah, they both did.
JK, there wasn't an official announcement from J.K. Johnson, the Ohio State corner. Mm-hmm. It was more of
he changed his Twitter profile.
Twitter bio says Ohio State, arrow, LSU. So I was like, oh, he's the other one, what was his name? The one from Syracuse.
Darian Chestnut.
He put out an official statement saying he's going.
Yeah, he went on an official visit, did the whole thing, and I think he was which one? Oh, it's J.K. Johnson that went to DeSmet played under Steeples whenever they're the number 1 team in the country. Right. Obviously, Mekhi Wingo was there. So
really? That's cool.
So I think he led him on his recruiting visit whenever he came into town. So obvious ties there, and that's why people weren't really surprised to see you get him. But he's a talented player at a place where LSU needs depth. And I think the bigger coup for LSU is you don't want to build through the transfer portal, But if you can add younger guys
Right.
from the portal that you can develop, then you're starting to get somewhere where you can add a redshirt freshman or a sophomore that has
Right.
2 to play 2, as opposed to bringing in a senior that's like, all right, we're going to have to go through this thing next year. Like, you're almost in a very precarious position if you had lost Fuchsia, Brooks, Converse, all in one fell swoop, and those are all guys that you brought in
Right.
from the portal. So you're able to add, you get Brooks to stay, you add 2 more corners, and it feels like Chestnut, well, I guess 3 you could say
Right.
with Denver Harris. So it feels like you've added depth at a position that you totally were lacking probably a month ago, 2
Right.
months ago, and now it seems like a position that's a strength. And I think Chestnut has more on paper. He has the better resume as opposed to the 2 corners, but you'll take both of them. You'll take a guy from Ohio State
Oh, yeah.
as a,
Yeah.
as
But
a blue blood
honestly-
program.
Right.
Yeah, at this point, you'll take anything when it comes
Yeah.
to defensive back because that room is just so slim after this past season because you had to rebuild basically for a year with guys like Mekhi Garner and Joe Fouché and just and Jarek Bernard Converse, where you're just going to get the best in the portal no matter if they're going to leave or not. And so you've seen that mentality kind of shift where they're going for younger guys. They've built the DB room with Javian Toviano and Denver Harris and J.K. Johnson and Chestnut, where they can, play next year.
Yeah.
But they'd also be there the year after that. You're not having to redo this cycle every year. Like, I think Arizona State got another quarterback commit. Like, they're on their 3rd quarterback in 3 years. Like, they went from Jane Daniels, he left, transferred in Emory Jones, he left, and they just got somebody
JT
else.
Daniels.
Yeah, no, they got I think they got Hudson Card, maybe. No, it was somebody. No, he went to Purdue. They got
JT
somebody.
Daniels did?
JT
I think
Daniels
he
went to
to
Rice.
Oh, God, good for him. Good luck.
Yeah, all
But,
right. That was weird.
Like, they're on there. Like, that's what you don't want to be in that spot at any position where you're having to every year
Reload the clip.
reload,
Yeah.
and they just leave. You know what I mean? Like, it's like NCAA basketball where
Right.
it's one and done. You just got freshmen every year.
Yeah.
And so being able to get anything is big, but especially when you can get proven talent like Darian Chestnut, where you've seen he was a 1-3 All-American, and then
He's a number 7 DB in the portal.
right, and then J.K. Johnson, where he's coming from a school that thinks they're DBU. So
Right.
I mean, obviously they're putting out talent, every year. So if you can get somebody like him, and then I think Lloyd, you said the other day he might have a connection to Seven Banks. Who knows? Like, they played together, they were on the same team. Like, and then you could see Seven Banks on the field next year, and so now you're starting to see kind of a group be developed that can be
A strength.
a strength, this year, but then you're really looking down the line in 2 years where these guys are going to be sophomores and juniors and seniors maybe, and they've been here and they've built a culture in that room in a position that's really that's important because it's one of the most difficult positions on the field to be a cornerback and to line up one-on-one with a wide receiver.
Yeah.
It's so important, and so to be able to build that culture and build that talent up is very important.
So
Well, the-
JK and 7 played in high school together?
No, they both were
went
Ohio
to
State.
Ohio State.
Okay. That was where. All right. Where's
both-
JK from? Oh, Missouri.
They both, that's where DeSmet is, where Steeples coached, where Mekhi Wingo, they all played together. So that's their connection. They both will be on their junior year, so you can hope you can keep one at least. They both have played 2 years. I would imagine that JK seems like the more likely of the two to be able to stick around for a senior year. But
Right.
if you can plug and play a Chestnut and Denver Harris on your 2 edges, you have Zy Alexander that's able to fill in. A player.
His film looked great
Right.
at Southeastern. Like, sometimes you can be kind of iffy when you take somebody from one of the smaller schools in the state. Like, I think there was a lot of expectations for, like, Darren Evans when we got him. Where was he at? He was at Nichols, I think, and we had these expectations that he was going to come in and be a guy, and then he was on
Colby Richardson.
Yeah, he was getting. I mean, Darren Evans got torched against Mississippi State in that opener
Oh.
of that season, and so, like, sometimes you can be kind of iffy, but if you can give him the ability to develop to play against these top tier athletes by having other guys in the room, I mean, his film looked great. He has great ball skills, and he looked like a legit, D1 Power 5 cornerback. But sometimes it's difficult to make that jump from a smaller
From going
school.
from being the best player on the field, bar none, to being
Right.
able having to compete every rep with somebody you're essentially betting on yourself.
Yeah.
And so it's good to see as Alexander has that confidence, and now LSU adding more to the room, it just makes it harder to get on the field. You'd imagine
Right.
What they've added, like I said, 3 4 corners.
Yeah.
Azai being one of them. So there's going to be competition there. And I guess you didn't return anybody at corner. You can kind of figure your way around with what you want to do with Sage Ryan. Hopefully that helps that situation because he's been stuck in the nickel and it doesn't feel like that's
his spot.
That's his spot. They want to put him at safety. So
and then you have Toviano and Kylan Jackson, who are both listed as a safety, and they're recruiting, but. It's just at this point you're just a defensive back.
Yeah.
When you get to LSU, like they're gonna figure out where you fit. And I think we saw that with Jay Ward and Jarek Bernard Converse, who declared for the draft yesterday. I think a lot of the reason he did that was because he put out great film at Oklahoma State, but to come to LSU and play both positions and show that versatility, like we talked about with Jay Ward, that's such a big deal, especially when you play both of them so well at such a high level. So I think that is a big reason why he declared for the draft and didn't come back, because I think he could have had one more year.
I agree, but I think it felt like LSU knew this was coming. If they were hitting the portal this hard for corners, they knew that JBC was leaving, and it's
not surprising.
Yeah, it's not surprising, and it's merited. He came in here and played well, especially after playing in the Big 12, where it's air raid. They're going to throw it 60 times. He comes into a more, I guess, NFL style game, shows his versatility. Like you said, same through Jay Ward. I can play safety, I can play nickel, I can play outside corner. Like, those are things that scouts look at and identify as, he's a plug-and-play guy. Like, he's not just stuck on one thing. Like, that's the big knock on Eli Ricks going into the draft is he only plays outside corner, and he only wants to play it one way. He just wants to play man coverage. When you get to a real NFL scheme, that's not what they run. That's not what they do. So you have to be amenable to coaching, and you've seen that with LSU. These guys are willing to play anywhere and can play anywhere. So good for JBC. He earned it. He deserves it.
Yeah.
Go get your money.
I know. What round do y'all think he'll go in?
I mean, he's definitely going to get drafted. I don't think he's going to get
size-wise. I think he'll fourth.
Yeah,
4 to 6.
So?
I don't think he's going to be, one of the guys that hears his name called in the first, second round. But, I think the Alabama game is where he really made his imprint. Like, he had that big interception at the beginning, but then down the line, like at the end of the game in crunch time, he had like 2 or 3 big pass breakups right at the end of the game where you needed them. Like, Alabama was about to score, and you needed something, and he made it happen. And I think also a lot of it is, like, leadership. I think he's going to, in the sit-down meetings with teams and general managers and coaches, like, he's going to impress, whoever he talks to. Because, I mean, when he sat right here and talked to Jordy, I mean, it was impressive.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's going to go in and impress from a mental standpoint. So I think if he tests well, he has the film that he could, even jump to a third-round draft pick for a certain team. But he's going to hear his name called. He's not – it's not a mistake for him to declare for the draft.
Right.
Like he's going to get drafted.
Right. So also Anthony Bradford declared for the draft too. Did he announce this yesterday? I don't know when he announced
Saturday
it.
or Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Over the weekend.
I think, over the weekend. And also not a death blow to LSU.
Right.
It feels like you have a plug-and-play guy with Dellinger.
Honestly, that's the one position group that you're not even upset that you lose a guy.
Well, yeah, there's 4 other starters staying, right, in that position.
Yeah.
So he's fine. We're fine.
You have Dellinger. Technically,
We're
you
fine.
have 5.
Fine. Everything's fine.
Technically, you have 5 other starters because Bradford and Dellinger both started. So, I mean, technically, it's really just plug in. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see Emory Jones get shifted to the guard position where he, was intentionally, like, at first people thought he was going to be a guard. And so, I mean, if you see somebody like Zalance Hurd come in, already thinking he's going to take Will Campbell's spot, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up at the right tackle spot, which means you got a true freshman right tackle 2 years in a row. But if they're good enough to take the spot, I wouldn't be surprised if that ended up happening. But
did Dellinger start as guard and move to center,
No, he started
or start
at
as center and
center
move
in
to
the
guard?
first game.
And then move to guard.
Moved to guard.
Okay.
Yeah. And then he got hurt, and that's when you saw Bradford kind of get mixed in.
Yeah.
I don't know where he projects to go, but Bradford played well enough, I guess, to get drafted. And I'm sure he looks at the room and goes, I don't know if I'll have playing time next year. Like, instead of hitting the portal, I'll try my luck in the NFL draft.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to go to a downgrade. Like, if he has to go to the portal, play for a lesser team, or, you don't know how many people are in the portal. You don't know how many chances you're going to get.
Right.
So the best portal option for him is the NFL draft. I'd imagine I could see him going, like, 6th, 7th round. I'd hate to say undrafted, but he'll probably make a team because when he played, he was a mauler.
Yeah.
He's a great run blocker. You were excited to see him in the game.
Yeah.
As opposed to what else LSU had to offer early on in the year. So good for him, as always. Like, go get your money.
Mm-hmm.
But LSU is in a great spot on the offensive line.
I agree.
Do you think that Zalance Hurd, is he an early enrollee? Do you know?
I don't know.
Because if he is, that's when you get into
Right.
him shuffling to right tackle.
Because I think that might end up being what happens.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't be surprised if you just kind of obviously if he's good enough, because LSU is going to be in contention next year. Like, they're going to be competing. It's not just a building year.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if he's good enough, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up at that, that right tackle spot, and you can get Emory Jones. Because I think once Lance Hurd gets here, he's going to be one of your best 5.
Right.
So if that's how it ends up mixing up, I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe if a couple other guys. 'Cause I know Doomerville was another tackle that ended up he committed to Maryland. So I wouldn't be surprised if Lance Hurd comes in and makes some noise, but I think it would make a bigger difference if he was an early enrollee. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because you saw that happen that's what took Emory Jones a
Right.
second to get on the field. You'd love to see him. He was obviously ready. You'd love to see him play against Florida. I think that would have made a difference. I mean, Florida State. Mm-hmm. I think that would have made a difference. But because Catholic has certain rules, and Will Campbell was an early enrollee. He went to, Lance Hurd went to Neville too, didn't he? So I'd imagine he would be able to do it. Catholic has a weird rule where you can't early enroll. And so it kind of stunted Emory Jones's growth with the LSU coaching staff because they ain't seen him yet, so they can't put him out on the field in a game with only, a limited amount of time. Like, he didn't get to spend the spring with LSU or, like, the early practice sessions. Yeah. And so that kind of hampered his timeline of becoming your right tackle, starting for LSU. And as soon as you inserted him, you saw a massive change in how LSU played football. So I'd imagine if Zalance Hurd is able to get in early, it's the same guy that said he was going to come play left tackle.
Right, come take Will Campbell's spot.
Right. Mm-hmm. They played together, so I'm sure it's all in good fun, but he, like that, whenever you say stuff like that, that carries waves, like whether it be to the coaching staff or just LSU public, to think that you could come in and challenge for that job after you saw what Will Campbell did speaks volumes about his confidence. Mm-hmm. So I'd imagine he would take any job on the field if you could get it to him, but I think he does project as a right tackle, right guard. That's going to be a battle, but you're not losing either one of them. You can slide Emory Jones down or slide. Zalance is more built for a tackle, but they're both monsters. And LSU's run game is going to be unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.